before we get going, I wanted to say thank you to all those who volunteered and volunteered with their time and resources to make our Easter celebration happen. So again, it was a wonderful time of celebrating the resurrection. And again, thank you for all of you who lent a hand and helped out and donated your time and food and resources and things of that nature to make our celebration happen. And we look forward to doing that for many, many years to come. So again, thank you. It was a wonderful Easter celebration. We're going to get into a new series, and it's a book to which I'll talk about in a little bit. But first, I wanted to share a story about my uncle, and I know that I mentioned my uncle at least a few times in the past. But God rest his soul. I had so much fun living with him for a year, but it was a year before actually Aaron and I got married too. So I really remember that time with him. So there was many stories and laughs, and even a few serious moments too with them that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Now, obviously, I knew my uncle as kind of a cool uncle because, he was literally the life of the party, and his life was literally a party. He was more or less kind of your proverbial kind of lifelong bachelor kind of guy, and he lived his life to the max. So he had a really he had a lot of interesting stories to share, a lot of the experiences that he experienced, and I recall there were a few times though in sharing those funny laughs and ha moments where it got really a little bit more, the tone got a little bit more serious, and he became a lot more, I guess, reflective in a lot of ways. And as he kind of looked back on his life on a few occasions, I recall him sharing about times in which maybe not so much he regrets, but if he could change things that he wouldn't treat people as badly maybe as he did. And he's like, I'm in my 70s, Wayne, and look, I have no one to take care of me, and that's kind of my fault, kind of thing. I treated, I didn't take maybe relationships as serious as I could have, and I'm alone for it now. And I thought about that, and I was kind of as I recall kind of listening to him speak. He was really kind of taken aback by that recollection, and almost like woulda, coulda, shoulda. But at the same time, it was like, well, but that's just the way it is right now, and I made my bed and I have to lay in it now, kind of mentality, and yeah, it was just really interesting to hear snippets of his life and how it kind of affected him in that time and space too. So again, I really appreciated those moments with my uncle, because it was a really I got to know him more as the person that he was versus just being I guess the cool uncle. But that idea that this is the reason why I'm alone, kind of thing, in my 70s, and with no one to take care of me, was because of the way I've treated people in the past. Now, in our book, James Bryan Smith, he told a story, and I'm going to mention the book on a few occasions in a little bit, but Smith, he told a story about a man named Ben. James Smith was a chaplain at a retirement center one summer and met a man named Ben, whom the rest of the staff at the retirement center told him, well, good luck talking to him. I guess he had a reputation. Ben had a reputation. At the time, Ben was a 75-year-old man whom looked like, your typical 75-year-old man, with a button-down shirt and a cardigan, and with the look that, he lived a good and wonderful life. But as they began chatting, and as Smith got to know Ben for maybe a week or so, he realized that Ben not was a little off, but he could tell that maybe there was something a little off on him, that he was maybe lonely and wanted to confess. Now, maybe not confess one specific thing, but that he wanted to confess to have lived a bad life. According to Ben, this is according to Ben, I was born in 1910. I made my first million by 1935. I was 25 years old. By the age of 45, I was the richest man in my state. Politicians wanted to be my friend. I lied, cheated, and stole from whoever I could. My motto was simple: take all you can from whoever you can. I amassed wealth, and everyone was impressed with me. I had a lot of power in those days. I had 2,000 employees, and all of them looked up to me or were afraid of me. Money was really all I cared about. I had 3 wives, all who left me either because of neglect or because they caught me in one of my many affairs. I have 1 daughter who is now in her 40s, but she refuses to speak to me. Now imagine hearing something like that. A little unexpected, huh? A little unexpected coming from, a typical 75-year-old man. Now he went on to mention that he really has nothing, and his life was just kind of pared down to waiting each day to die. Imagine thinking about life in those terms. You're just waiting to die. He also said that he still has a lot of money. He still has quite a bit of money, more than he knows what to do with. But a little change is that money no longer brings him joy. He boiled his first 75 years of life as, I cared about no one in life, and now no one cares about me. Now I ask, how does one come to that conclusion about life? Because I imagine, and I also kind of think about our lives and maybe in this way, or maybe people we've known who led their lives in this way. Because I imagine Ben, or maybe others who maybe live with some type of regret. Ben, I'd imagine at a young age, didn't wake up one day and said, I want my life to be miserable. I want to live a very miserable life and never want to be happy. Oh, and I want to ruin as many of other people's life that I don't know of because I can, kind of thing. I want to ruin as many people's lives as I can because that's just what I want to do. I imagine he did not wake up one day and say that. Now, I know people who are, I wouldn't say miserable, but maybe stuck. I guess that would be a good word right now, but will never admit it, based on the choices and decisions that they've made, and how they have to live with those decisions and choices that they've made in the past, and how it's really hard to move on from those choices and decisions. Now, in a recent poll or survey in relation to parents and kids, now there were several people that were polled or surveyed in this, and the question was, what did your parents want most for you? Success, wealth, to be a good person, or to be happy, or happiness? Now I want us to think about that question. As I think we all have parents or some form of guardianship. I want us to think about, what did our parents or our guardians want the most from us? According to the survey, an astounding 85% said happiness. Of the parents that said happiness, that their parents wanted happiness from them. So this begs the question again, where does happiness come from? Where does it come from? Does it come from our society? Maybe not our society. Our cultural desire says, don't suppress desire. All desire is good. The idea of, if it feels good, then you should probably do it, kind of thing. Rules are meant to be broken. Like, rules, what are they for? Who follows them anyway? Because nice guys finish last, right? So don't be nice, right? Get what's yours. And since nice guys finish last, you kind of have to be cutthroat and get your own while you can, kind of mentality, right? That's kind of what society portrays this world to be, or at least our culture here in America. Romans 1, 18 through 32, to which I implore you all to read on your own. Romans 1, maybe in fact the entirety of Romans chapter 1, and that's the 6th book in the Bible. And very quickly, this is Apostle Paul's epistle to the Romans, is seen by scholars as his masterpiece. This is Paul's kind of claim to fame, I guess you could say. Now, in Romans is Apostle Paul's longest letter that he authored in the New Testament, and to summarize maybe his entire letter from a very bird's eye point of view, that it is the gospel or the good news of salvation of Jew and Greek alike by the grace of God through faith in Jesus Christ. So that's what he attempts to communicate through the book of Romans, that salvation more or less is for everyone. It's for Jew and Greek, or it's for Jew and Gentile, by the grace of God through faith in Jesus Christ. Now, Romans 1, specifically verses 18 through 32, Paul describes how a human life spirals out of control and into ruin, more or less. But the idea is when we reject God and attempt to replace God, knowingly or not, with things that cannot satisfy or things that are, instantly gratifying in the moment. Dare I say sex, drugs, rock and roll, anyone? That we naturally begin to reflect everything that stands against God, that being that S word, sin. Sin. Now I wanted to read from Romans 1:28, and it says this: "And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind and to things that should not be done. They were filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, covetousness, malice, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, craftiness. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, rebellious towards parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless." My, that's quite a list, isn't it? That's quite a list. And remember, this ancient text was written thousands and thousands of years ago, but yet looking at the list, if we all look at it, in our own Bibles and translations, I would say that it's the same, if not similar issues that we face today, isn't it? As a society. That when we turn on our TVs or read the news from whatever source we get it from, what do we see, right? What do we see typically? Well, we see murder, we see rape, we see drug use and drug abuse, corruption in politics, etc., etc., etc. So maybe we aren't so different after all. Now the book we are going to spend the next several weeks on hopefully answers that question, or at least helps answer or lead us to a place to answer the question of how do you be happy? How do you be happy? How do you enjoy life? And it's the same author, same type of book, same type of style. And remember, if you want one, I'll get one for you. Just let me know. And it's called The Good and Beautiful Life, or the other one was called The Good and Beautiful God. The Good and Beautiful God, the last book focused on God and the character and characteristics of God, understanding that God isn't a taskmaster waiting for us to mess up, but a God whom invites us to a better way. A God whom invites us to a better way. Now this book explores this better way, or the other way of living based on the Sermon on the Mount. And now the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' first recorded sermon in the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5 through 7. So if you want to get familiar with this scripture, I highly encourage you to do that. It's the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5, 6, and 7. Now the aim is to help us understand and implement the teachings of Jesus about things like anger, lust, lying, worrying, pride, and judging others. I'll read that list one more time. Anger, lust, lying, worrying, pride, and judging others. And I know it's shocking, but living according to Jesus' teachings leads to a pretty good life. I know that's shocking, right? But it leads to a pretty good life. A life in which we can withstand the storms that we all face. Now, unfortunately, and maybe for some of you too, I know far too many people that when the storms or the floods hit in their lives, unfortunately, things to medicate themselves like drugs or alcohol, pills, anything to cope, and anything to more or less numb themselves or not to feel any pain is where they go, more or less. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a way of dealing with issues that come up in life. It's probably not the safest or the most healthy way to deal with it, but it is a way to deal with the storms and the floods that kind of go on in our lives. Jesus offers a way too, and it's better, But to know that it's not magic or a formula to success, but it begins with simply abiding and forces us to confront versus sweep under the rug or run away. I grew up with this idea that, for all the issues or the floods or the storms that we go through, we'll deal with that later. Just kind of sweep it under the rug and hope it goes away for now, and just kind of grit your teeth and kind of push forward. You could do that, and I've done that, and I became pretty good at that. But the idea against that way of thinking is that it's still there. It's still there, kind of gnawing at you until you confront the issue. Now we're going to start this teaching today by ironically looking at how Jesus ended the Sermon on the Mount. Not how he began, but how he ended the Sermon on the Mount. How's that for a switcheroo? Don't start at the beginning. Let's start at the end. And this is a scripture for today. It's Matthew 7, 24 through 27. Matthew 7, 24 through 27. And this is the words of Jesus. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. Now, what words is Jesus referring to when he says, hear these words and acts on them? Well, it's the prior two chapters that he's referring to, which is the Sermon on the Mount. He's talking about his command not to be ruled by anger or lust or deception, not retaliating or worrying, and not judging people. So don't we sometimes pass these kind of ideas over, like, worrying or retaliating or anger, lust, deception kind of thing? Don't we kind of pass these off as, well, these really cannot be helped in our lives because, at least I'm not doing like XYZ sin for everyone to see kind of thing. Because at least these sins are, very, very easily hidden. People would have to actually dig up into my life, or I'd have to kind of really think about these things before these things are revealed, right? So it's easy to pass these things off, but at the same time, that's not the most, still there, if we're struggling with these things, they're still there, which means that they need to be confronted and brought to the light. Now I wanted to share about a life that was well lived. We focused on these, other stories. I wanted to share about a life that was well lived. Now around middle school, I recall my dad brought home a few basketballs for my brother and I. For my brother and I, we kind of grew up playing basketball, and for me, I really enjoy it. I love the game. I've had the opportunity to play a lot, quite a bit, and also coach it for a long time too. And I had so much fun doing actually both. I just love being around the game. I really appreciate the skill that people have to play this game. So bringing home, basketballs wasn't, for my dad at least, to bring us home basketball wasn't such a big deal because, we had plenty in our household because, we played quite a bit as kids. But these particular basketballs were signed by John Wooden. I had a recollection of who John Wooden was back in this time, and I was probably maybe in middle schoolish, so I kind of had an idea who John Wooden was, but it took me a little while later to come to realize the man that he was. Now, if you don't know, John Wooden was a legendary UCLA basketball coach who won 10 NCAA champions. No other coach has more than 5. He, as a coach of UCLA, won 88 games at one point in a row. 88 straight games in a row, which is literally unheard of. Like no one's ever going to do that ever again. And he coached some of the greatest players to ever play the game. Now, it was said on the first day of practice, Coach Wooden spent 1 hour at the first day of practice. And mind you, these guys, that played for Coach Wooden weren't just some random guys, that were picked off, the street or whatever. These are some of the best players in college basketball. Coach Wooden spent the first hour teaching his players how to put their socks on properly. how to put their socks on properly, because not doing so would lead to blisters. And if any of you have done anything of that sort, of playing a sport or running or whatever, you know about blisters. Oh, I know about blisters. They are painful. Man, they're painful. Coach was teaching his players a very important life principle in this, matter of putting your socks on, which was do even the small things well. Do even the small things well. When he was about 25 years old, Coach Wooden made up his mind to live by a set of principles and never ever waver from them. The principles now were based on the Bible and the teachings of Jesus. Principles like courage, honesty, hard work, character, loyalty, virtue, and honor, because these constitute to a good life. Now, Coach Wooden passed away in 2010 at the age of 99 years old, about maybe 4 months or so away from the century mark, from 100. And up until that point, his former players, and there were a lot of them, former players would call him, not every now and then, but often once a week, to tell him they love him and thank them for how he influenced their lives, not just in basketball, but in all facets of life. It's a lot of players to be calling once a week. Coach Wooden's story is a testament to a life that was built on the rock. I pray that Coach Wooden's story inspires us that no matter who we are, we must choose a narrative we will practice and live by daily. All who take Jesus' teachings and words to heart and attempt to live their lives around them builds their house on rock, never to be shaken even in the storms or floods that come in life. And do we see this detail? Revolving our lives around the teaching of Jesus does not equate to storms or floods ever affecting us. If we haven't learned already these past few years, anybody, that storms and floods will always be with us in our lives, then we cannot control that, because things just happen. No matter how closely we follow Jesus, they are just there. They are just a part of our lives. But when we revolve our lives around the teachings of Jesus, to be able to have the faith and resolve to withstand the storms and floods of life, to still know without a shadow of a doubt, despite what happens in our outward circumstances, that God is still present and has not gone anywhere. He's still with us, and he will still always be with us. Jesus is not demanding we live his way in order to get his blessing or get into heaven when we die. He is simply telling the truth about reality. And Smith goes on to say in his book, he warns us against lust, not because he is a prude, I love that word, not because he's a prude, but because he knows it destroys human lives when unchecked. He tells us not to worry, not because it will give us ulcers, but because people who live with them in the kingdom of God need not worry. It is a waste of time. Lust, worry, judgment, and anger, retaliation, and pride are never good or beautiful and never lead to freedom. In fact, they are a flight from freedom. Freedom equates to living life abundant. Freedom equates to living life abundant. And this is what Jesus yearns for each and every one of us. So again, in the next several weeks, we will explore this abundant life that Jesus offers us through the Sermon on the Mount scripture. So remember, I'm going to say this one more time, if you want to get a head start or need some good reading for the next few weeks, Matthew chapters 5 through 7 is a wonderful place to start and begin to meditate on and pray through and just kind of read and enjoy, because this is what we're going to kind of focus on, and hopefully it'll change the way we think about life and our outlooks on life. Now, going back to the story of Ben, there's a conclusion to the story. So, one day Smith, the author who told the story about Ben, got a letter from Ben's daughter, sharing that Ben had passed away at 88. Remember, Smith met Ben when he was 75, so maybe 13 or so years after this, Ben passed away. The daughter went on to say, that she reconciled with her father and that he came to know Jesus in a very intimate way. She said he spent his final years on earth a changed man. Change is possible, isn't it? Because among many, many, many other wonderful things, God is in the business of changing things. Changing things and making those things that were once old, battered by life and mistakes, to something brand new. Sounds like something familiar we celebrated last week, huh? Sounds like resurrection. Lamentations 3 says this: the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Every day we must begin anew, for it is a brand new day. Although the past, our past that we all have, is in stone and unfortunately cannot be changed, that does not dictate our future or have any relevance to our future. So far from the truth. Our future is an open canvas, ready to be affected by what we do. Now, to conclude, there's an invitation to all of this, and it isn't hard. This invitation isn't hard, and Jesus didn't make it to be hard either. In fact, it's 3 words from Jesus that each day Jesus says to us, "Come, follow me." So, may we come to see that Jesus is good, and may we make the decision every single day to come and follow him and see where that goes for us. So, may we have a blessed week. May we see the Lord move in our lives, and may grace and peace be with you all.